Alrighty, so if you're at this item, that means you've gotten through these first couple of things you need to do in order to get your first week started. Now, this may seem like a little bit of work, and this will be based on your experience level. And part of the reason I release early is to give you a chance to get this done. So, in this video, the last one before we actually start the class, I give you some steps to do. You're doing number one right now. And then what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to suggest you watch section 1 and 2 in the course we're using. Now, let me preface this by saying the following, and let me actually come over here and look at it. So this is really good content. This guide that he gives you, this PDF, I think is really good to have around, so you could download that. And where he's setting up your machine is basically what we just did. Not basically, it is what you did in, I was going to see the list, but in the items, okay? So we installed VS Code. So what's different about my course than Andrew Mead's course is that he does not use GitHub, or teach the workflow. That's why understanding that, having that experience is really important. He will also talk to you about installing Node.js. I have given this some thought, and for most students, the only time we're going to be using Node.js is really here in section 3. And because what I immediately do is show students how to run JavaScript from the browser. So you are not required at this point to install Node.js, which, by the way, let me say this. If this is your discipline of studying web development, then you absolutely can, and anyone can. I'm going to move over to VS Code really quick. Okay, now I have it already installed on my system because I went through and did it, right? I'm running a little bit older version, and all I did here is in my VS Code, I was in my terminal, I use bash here, and then I just run node dash dash version. So the reason he has you do Node is that you can just learn JavaScript as a language and not in the browser. But honestly, it's not that hard to run it in the browser, okay? So I just want to say this item right here, I'm going to show you how not to have to need this to run, to do all the code. If you want to, it's totally up to you. The second one, the Windows Commander, I also do not recommend you do, because honestly, with VS Code, which I think this dates this video series a little bit, with VS Code, that's perfectly why we have our perfectly good use of the terminal itself. Okay, so again, if I just drop here, I go over and do a new terminal. It is there. Notice how it defaults. I'll show you something about this in a minute. But for me, what I did is I ran bash as my default command line. Now, if you're on Windows, you can totally use PowerShell. It's up to you. You just need once in a while to have access to terminal. But again, I'm about to show you how to get around that. Now, this one is really helpful. Understanding, even without necessarily needing all of this for this course, meaning how to run commands in the terminal. Understanding some command line is always good, so check that out. And then the last thing is actually the thing you're going to code. Okay, so we're actually getting to the code part. And again, he's going to run this through Node, right? So let me just walk through it and show you what I suggest at this point, given, again, you have choices here about how you want to approach this. This is just kind of the standard way I will recommend doing it. So the first thing I'm going to do is move back to VS Code. Now I've already got my local environment set up. I've already done all that work. And all I have is my git ignore that has been populated. Okay, so I've cloned, I've gone through the whole process. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to create in my private repo a new folder. And that new folder is going to be called JS-Bootcamp. And I recommend you do the same, okay? And then under JS Bootcamp, he's that when we get into the first week of the core of the semester and of our course, he'll have you do another directory. So let's just go ahead and do it called Basics. Okay. So what we have here is we have the main folder. We have two folders that are really representing a repo out on GitHub. And now we have a folder and then a folder inside of here. Okay, so it's in this folder when I click on basics that I'm going to write the code here, one line of code, but I just want to give you the experience and how to set it up. So in here, again, click here. I'm going to hit new file. So notice I've been hitting new folder. This is new file. Now I'm going to name it what he does. You'll learn about naming standards later, but I'm going to go ahead and call it Hello World. Okay. The reason it's turning green here is that this is new code because the version control is actually checking to say, hey, you have something new on your system. It's untracked at this point, which is the U. Okay, so now I'm actually going to write some code, right? Console.log hello Rio, whatever you want to write there. Okay. Now again, what he's going to show here is actually how to run it from the command line. I'm not, or I could. I totally could do that. And actually, let's do that just because again, you don't have to have Node installed. Now, one thing I did as I was talking there is I went over and I right clicked on this file, right clicked, and I said open in an integrated terminal. And what it did is it added another entry because it added another terminal window or session. And so now if I do, again, learn those commands just to have some added information for you, and you see it list that hello world, okay? And if I wanted to do what he did, hello, and if I type tab here, it'll actually look through and automatically run it, okay? Again, if you want to install Node, it's up to you. But here's what I'm going to do generally. And I'm going to back up here to the JS Bootcamp folder. Okay, and when you click on that, activates that folder. And in here, I'm going to type index.html. Okay, there's really nothing that has to go in here except just the basic HTML. And once you name a document.html, your VS Code, if you just hit explanation and tab, will fill in that required setup tags for a web page. Okay. And then I'm going to come to the bottom and I'm going to type script tab, and that will actually automatically, now you can type that manually, but why do it when there's some built-in features inside of most editors that let you do what's called basically automation, little automation. And now I'm going to type source, src equals, and then I'm going to open and close quotes. Okay. Now, at this point, you might be going, why are we doing all this setup? Well, we're doing it so A, you don't have to do Node, and B, the sooner you get into the browser, the better. Okay. So at this point, what VS Code is doing is it's looking at my local directory and it's asking, where is the script tag? And the script tag is a JavaScript tag. So I'll click into basics and I'll click into hello world. Okay. So the other thing I have set up, and I'll just say this now in case I haven't, is autosave. And definitely autosave is really nice because it automatically saves your work as any changes that you do. Now, this does not automatically do the Git workflow, but that's another, actually, you already learned the Git workflow. And by the way, what I did there is I just hit clear real quick. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that and I'm going to leave this bash here. Now, there's a couple things I can do at this point to actually run this code in the browser, because I've attached it with the script command into the HTML document and attached it not physically, just logically showing it. And what I could do here is actually, there's a couple ways. I think I was trying to remember on mine. Yeah, on mine, there's actually open in browser. But there's also just a reveal in Finder or in Windows for File Manager. So if you click on here, you'll see this structure, you double click on the index, there's nothing here, okay? but that's not really true. And the sooner you learn this particular part of the browser, the better. Right click, inspect, and it's going to drop you into DevTools. Google has invested a lot of their time and talent in this DevTools. Okay. And if you just kind of scroll over and just, you don't have to know what all this is. There's a lot in here. It's also overwhelming. But notice if, and by the way, the other thing is you can set this up to show you might, when you come in here, you might have what's new. You can click on console. So get to console. And at this point, you actually see the output of that code. And if you go to sources, you can actually see it here. There's my basic directory. There's my hello world. This actually shows the code, but the console actually is from running it. So let me actually show you this and show you one other tool in the process. So as an example, when you're writing your code for, and I'll show this when I do the overview for week 1, you can actually just leave this index file here and then just change the reference as you write other code. Okay, so I'll show that. But one of the things I want to show you is at this point we could actually drop this file. Now this file is just closed from the editor. We don't need to do any other work to it. And if I come over here and I say hello Chrome, right, my VS Code automatically saves that for me. Okay, and now what I can do is come over to my browser, and I'm using for me, I'm on the Mac, so it's Command Tab, but to move through the screens. And what I can do is refresh, and now notice what happens is that's the output for the updated code that I wrote. Okay, so that's your workflow if you don't want to install Node.js, okay? Which again, it's not necessarily bad. It's just there are all these different versions of Node, and it gets into some other topics that I think for a beginning class is probably, this hopefully will make it a little bit easier. So again, right, this is the workflow I recommend. Now let me actually just go over here and show you now that we're doing this. I'm going to go back. Right now I have my terminal here, and I'm going to actually show you just real quickly how to version control this, right? Because I actually have a couple of things in here. So I actually could have done it from that JS Bootcamp directory, but I decided to right click, open an integrated terminal, and I'm going to do git status. And I'm going to say, oh, I have some untracked files. So I'm going to do git add star, which will add the files that I have. Okay. And now notice what happens here is it actually added that file. And which is why, Rio, I'm talking to myself here, I'm going to back up one directory. I'm going to do git add. If I had done it from there, it actually would have added both of those. Okay. So now that I've added the files, I'm just going to do a clear git commit, right, -m, and I'm going to say section 2 code. Okay, cool. Git commit. So notice for me, and most likely for you, what happens here is this changes the coloring to show you now you have actually committed this. It hasn't been pushed to GitHub yet. So if I do git push, actually do get that there. Okay, last thing I'm going to show you in this video. The other thing, and actually maybe I might wait, but let me preview it. How about that? So one of the things you can do, and I'm going to drop this file for a minute. I'm going to actually open this in my integrated terminal, which by the way, what I'm doing here is actually if you watch this introduction to the terminal, you'll learn some of the commands like ls, pwd, to give you an experience of command line. Okay, so if I wanted to back up out of this directory, I do that. So now I'm in just my private repo. Now it might be a little bit hard to see, but okay, I'll increase it a little bit. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is that one of the things I like to do, and I'm going to do J tab because there's only one folder. I'm going to go into this folder. Now I run something called Live Server. Now this is a command line application that runs a server on my local system. Again, you don't have to do this. There's actually other ways for you to do this. I'm going to show you one. Now, and I'll show you why you want to do this in the long run. So what you can do here is there's actually live servers. There's different ones. When I'm installing something, and by the way, I should have said this, I clicked on the extensions in VS Code, and then I went just typed live because I happen to know the most popular live server is here. And what I can do here is I can just install it. Cool. Let's see. The one thing I do, and I probably should slow down a little bit here, it actually did show me that it installed that live server, right? Cool. That's awesome. Now it's there. And now I'm going to show you how to run it. Okay. So, and actually, I don't normally run it, so I get to learn with you here real quick. Launch to launch local for dynamic. Let's just see the commands real quick. Okay, good. There should just be go live. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to my Explorer. I'm going to have my index file, and there should be, oh, there is a go live. So check this out. If you hit go live here, this is the same look because there's nothing here. Right click, inspect. Okay. Now here, console, right? Ooh, there's some messages here. Let's do a refresh real quick. Okay. Hello, Chrome. So in here, now the reason you might want to run live server is because you don't have to refresh this every time you change code. Like if I go back up here and I say hello live server, let's see if it actually does dash. Okay. Notice what happens is it automatically runs that new code. Now you do not have to do this piece. But over the long run, you might think about doing it, and I just wanted to kind of tell you about it now. Okay. All right. So let's go back here. We're pretty much done with this. So I've gone over, really it's the last video in section 2. Reply here, right? Telling us if you were successful in getting your local dev environment set up and getting through the Git workflow, or you can ask questions. You might start by just introducing yourself. That might be a good way to go. And then if you have any questions about whatever we've covered so far, including this video, please let us know that. And again, I've tried to give you in this video some options for how to approach some of the requirements, like I said, getting around not installing Node. You can use another editor. I've already talked about that. I don't recommend Commander. I've shown you a little bit of the terminal. Definitely recommend watching that one to get more of that. Okay, hope this helps you out, and I'll talk to you soon.